Hello and welcome to another episode of BTP, Breaking the Plane. And this is a special episode because I am joined by the one, the only Michael Nuttle, who has a special announcement. Mike, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you, Nick. I appreciate you having me on. Looking forward to chatting with you this evening. Appreciate the floor. Just wanted to give a quick shout out to my parents, Casey and Karen Nuttle, celebrating the 41st wedding anniversary today. So I got to give them some props on that. As somebody who's not even married for a year, 41 years, that's pretty impressive. They're a great example for a marriage, man, and I'm very happy for them, so I hope they're having a great night.
You know what? They raised one hell of a son. I'll tell them that much, man.
Yeah, please do. If you want to speak up a little louder for the people in the back, let them, make sure my mom catches that. That'd be appreciated.
Yeah, no doubt. And his name in our Slack channels of ITP is actually hashtag Sad Mike Nuttle. And that's...
I know, man. Was that Dave Archibald who coined that? I think the first time.
I think
I'm really sad that caught on.
It really caught on, and then Andrew and I, when we were doing all the Phantom stuff during the fantasy season, it just went rampant. And again, it's not because you're a malicious or a miserable person. You're honestly, in my opinion, the nicest person at Inside the Pylon. But the nickname is just derived from your football fandom.
Well, you're a Browns fan, man. So if you're gonna be sad, at least be the best sad person too. I don't know.
You see, I would like to think that I understand, but I really don't, because I'm a Knicks fan, and basketball's not even my first love. Obviously, football is, but I still don't think it compares, man. The Cleveland Browns have just, with everything, with Baltimore taking over their entire franchise, everything that's happened in your guys' history, Belichick being a former coach, it's just hashtag sad.
It's what makes you hashtag Sad Mike Nuttle, man.
That's,
what can I say?
There's really nothing you could say. But on March 9th, my man, the Browns go out and acquire Jarvis Landry from Miami, Tyrod Taylor from the Bills, Randall from the Packers. How far did your jaw drop on that day? And were you expecting all these moves to kind of happen?
Well, definitely was not expecting any of it. It was funny. So the Jarvis Landry one was the first one that went down. And, I'd been talking with a buddy at work, and we'd kind of been talking because there was rumors that the Browns were targeting Jarvis Landry. And at that time, it was like, man, I don't think you're going to pry him away from Miami for anything less than a second rounder. And so it gets towards the end of the workday. I'm heading out. It's Friday, and he, comes by my desk, and he's like, oh, hey, did you see we just traded for Jarvis Landry? And I was like, oh, no. This isn't how you want to start your week. And so, honestly, I wasn't too thrilled because, so full disclosure, I'm a CPA. So numbers are kind of my thing, and all I can think of is that $16 million cap hit coming for a slot receiver, and I'm like, that's not really how I want to go about that. But, once you finally kind of figure out that it ended up being, fourth rounder this year, seventh rounder next year, you feel a little bit better about the compensation. I'm still not wild about paying Jarvis Landry $16 million a year because I'm not wild about paying too many wide receivers $16 million a year if their name isn't Antonio Brown or Mike Evans, really.
Or Odell Beckham.
But you definitely don't get worse by adding Jarvis Landry to a wide receiver room that is lucky to have both Josh Gordon and Corey Coleman, if you're lucky, if both of them are on the field. So then I'm texting another friend about this and giving him my thoughts, and all of a sudden he just texts me the word Tyrod, ? I'm like, no. Dude, we're not talking about Tyrod right now, man. We're talking about Jarvis Landry. He's like, no, Browns just traded for Tyrod Taylor. And I was like, oh my goodness. So again, you're thinking what do we have to give up? Here's an $18 million cap hit, all this stuff. Because, I think one of the big things for me, John Dorsey, the new GM coming in, everyone talks, is like, hey, this guy's got a great eye for talent. So I'm 100% on board with that. But it's look at the cap, the cap room that he left, the cap situation that was there in Kansas City. The guy just mismanaged the cap like crazy. And I was like, he's doing that right now. He's going for big splashes. He's trying to do that. So then I was getting a little, you could say worried. I was getting a little worried. I mean, nothing against Tyrod, nothing against Jarvis Landry, both really good football players, but it's is this the best way to go about it? But when you have $111 million in cap space, I guess you can get a little crazy sometimes with who you bring in. But honestly, my favorite move of the day was the third one, in acquiring Randall. Before I really started kind of getting into scouting, doing my own, and I did the scouting academy just like you. I mean, that's how we met down in Mobile and everything. Great times, as always. And so I was just always reading I loved reading like everybody's work. John Ledyard, Kyle Krabs, like all those guys. I'd read their stuff, and like one of the guys I really fell in love with was Demarius Randall. I was like, man, I really like this guy coming out of Arizona State. So then the fact that Browns just acquired him, I was like, hey, this is great. We need a cornerback, like all this stuff and everything. And I'm like, hey, yeah, like this is cool. And then it's like, what kind of draft pick do we just give up? Because this guy's pretty good. And then you see, like, they don't even really talk about the draft picks. The fact that they sent Kaiser. And it's like, I really like Kaiser, and I know our friend Jeff Fair is with me on that. I think we were all on the show together last year during the second round when the Browns drafted Kaiser, and it was. I don't think he ever got a fair shake.
No, yeah, there's no way he got a fair shake.
I'm hoping that in Green Bay he's got a chance to actually maybe learn a little bit. I think anybody who watched him this year does not say that he is ready to lead a team right now, but you see a lot of things that can be good for him and that he can build on, and I think that in Green Bay that's going to be a great area where he can learn and take the time, because he's 22 years old. I mean, there's no need to rush him at all and everything. So I think he's in a good situation. At the same time, you bring back Demarius Randall, who helps a secondary that honestly needed a lot of help after last year. So did I see any of these coming? Not at all.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are going for it. And Demarius Randall played a lot of corner last year. You guys are planning on playing him at safety. And yeah. I'm guessing, you think Williams is going to look to play Jabril Peppers closer to the line of scrimmage? Is that kind of the word coming out of Ohio right now?
Yeah, so I think Jeff Risden over there at Browns Wire, he had an article probably about 3 weeks ago, even before all of this went down, saying that the plan was to move Jabril Peppers more into that box safety. I put that in air quotes for those who are not watching live at home right now. That box safety role, playing him closer to the line of scrimmage. Because if you watch, what he did in Michigan, he wasn't a guy who you put 15 or 25 yards, depending on what Greg Williams is feeling like that day. But he wasn't a guy who played that type of safety position, didn't play that true center field free safety position. So now you're moving him back into a role that's a little bit more comfortable for him. And then you're moving, Demarius Randall back to free safety, where he played a little bit in college and everything. And I think you see, I think it was Ben Fennell, I was watching some of this stuff that he was putting out on Twitter, and just, that quick mental processing speed that Demarius Randall has, that's going to be that you don't quite see from Jabril Peppers, because he's still trying to learn that free safety position. So I think it's a good move for Jabril to be put back into a more natural position for him. I think it's good for Demarius, and it fills a big need for the Browns, because I don't think the plan is to play guys 25 yards off the line of scrimmage again this year. I think that was a little bit out of necessity last year, just because you're trying to make sure you aren't getting beat. So it'll be interesting. It's going to be interesting because, honestly, I thought Derek Kendrick, the guy who was a strong safety last year for the Browns, actually played pretty well. So I don't think there's any guarantee that Jabril Peppers is the starting strong safety day one in the 2018 season for the Browns. I think him and Derek Kendrick are going to have to duke it out. But I'm sure, Jabril is a draft pick of, this regime. Well, I mean, Hugh Jackson's regime, not necessarily Dorsey's, and Derek Kendrick was from the last one. So it's like, I think they were going to give him every chance to start, but I don't think that he can just expect to start right away.
Exactly, man. So we talked a little bit about John Dorsey coming into Cleveland. I mean, just as a Browns fan, you've been through this time and time again after regime. Is this the guy who's going to right this ship and turn the Browns into a legitimate contender?
Absolutely.
100%. I love it. I love the I see the audience listening right now is not looking at Mike Nuttle. I am looking at him through Skype, and you have a huge smile on your face, and you look very confident.
Absolutely. Now, if you would have asked me this 2 years ago when we hired Sashi Brown, I would have had the same exact answer. And when we hired Ray Farmer, I would have had the same exact answer too.
But Mike, I gotta ask you this. So Sashi Brown, say Dorsey turns this all around. Sashi deserves credit. Sashi should get credit for this.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I was a big fan of Sashi. I love Sashi, and when he got fired, I was pretty upset. I was like, hey, they fired the wrong guy. Admittedly, I'm not a huge Hugh Jackson fan right now. I think he's kind of mismanaging the way guys are being played. Obviously, Kaiser being one of those. So I was pretty upset when they got rid of Sashi. But if you look at what John Dorsey's doing so far in his short tenure, a lot of that is because of the foundation that Sashi built in the last 2 years. Sashi took a lot of lumps. Obviously, the 1-31. I mean, he built the roster. At the end of the day, he built the roster that went 1-31. But whether that was mismanaged or not, he put the people on the field, so there's no looking past that. But I think that was also his thing. All these rebuilds every year in Cleveland, nobody ever took the chance to actually just tear it down. I mean, this in 2016, it literally was Joe Thomas, Joe Hayden, and a bunch of rookies, and that was it. And nobody had ever tore it down to that extreme. So it's you can't expect too much. And so Sashi put on a brave face, and I know he took a lot of criticism for it, and still does, because everyone thinks he was an idiot for what he did. But I think when John Dorsey turns this around in the next couple of years, a lot of it's going to be because of what Sashi did the 2 years before him. So I will say, our friend Ben Solak over there at NDT Scouting, he did make a good point the one time. I was bumming pretty hard after Sashi got fired, and he said, Sashi's shtick the whole time was always the rebuild. We never knew if his plan or his capabilities even were continuing, once you actually got to the success. So maybe we needed to have somebody that's been there and had the success come in, like a John Dorsey who says maybe he's not about the rebuild as much, but he knows how to kind of get you that next step and keep you going, where Sashi was all about focused on the rebuild. I mean, at the end of the day, Nick, what can I do? I got to be hopeful, man. 16-0 starts in September. I can feel it.
I mean, that's why your wife married you, right? Because if you're as loyal to the Cleveland Browns, then you're definitely going to be loyal to her.
You're absolutely right, man. My wife, who is from Cleveland and is smart enough to not be a Browns fan. So there you go.
Yes. Man, the pain of a Browns fan, man. I feel so bad for you guys. So let's move on to a little bit of a... Well, first let's touch on some free agents. You guys bring in a right tackle in Chris Hubbard. You guys bring in TJ Carey. I mean, some little ads here that can really help the depth of your team. Hubbard's looking to start now that Joe Thomas has moved on. And then you also added Terrence Mitchell, who I think started a couple games with the Chiefs this past season. Do you enjoy these additions along with Carlos Hyde?
I think so. As each of these are popping up, my initial reaction, I'll be honest with you, the Chris Hubbard signing, I see $38 million or whatever, and Chris Hubbard, and I was like, cool. Who?
Yeah.
I honestly did not know who Chris Hubbard was, and I look and I was like, oh, he started 14 games in 4 years for the Steelers and everything. Then you start to read on him, and, I dug in, and Alex Corzo, I probably just butchered his last name, and I apologize. I mean, he had a lot of stuff on him, and a lot of the Pittsburgh people, they had a lot of good writing on him about how they weren't pleased to see him go, especially not to another AFC North team. So you start to look at these, and I think what you're seeing, if you look big picture and not necessarily at each individual, you're looking at Dorsey trying to build out depth with veterans, and not necessarily building out depth with expensive veterans. I mean, you look at all these contracts. Terrence Mitchell, did you need to give him $12 million over 3 years? Probably not. Carlos Hyde, you need to replace Crow, I guess. I mean, it's a deep running back class, but it's fine. TJ Carey, all of these guys, you're bringing in good depth. Because one thing that I feel like the Browns were missing, this team is built on youth, and as you keep playing these young guys, they're going to make rookie mistakes and things like that because they're still learning how to just play the game of football in the NFL. And so when you look to try to get depth or someone goes down, you're just replacing them with another young guy who also is still trying to learn. There was no veteran presence in there, and so now you're bringing in these veteran guys. So you're filling in spots with guys who, they're not. I mean, none of these signings blow anybody away. I mean, you're not seeing one of these signings being like, this is it. This is what turns the Browns around. But what you're seeing is a collection of guys that, when it's a fourth quarter and it's a close game, you're not relying solely on guys that have all of 4 games of experience in the NFL. You've got guys who've been in the league for a couple of years, and they know how to be in those situations, which I think speaks volumes to just the game of football in general, is just kind of understanding how to handle those situations. So you look at those, and none of the signings were egregious as far as, cap hits or anything like that. The Chris Hubbard one actually was really surprising because for how much it was, and like $18 million guaranteed, which is really surprising. But then you look, and it's actually the $9 million of his base salary next season, so 2019, 2 years from now, I should say, is guaranteed if he's on the roster like the third league year. So if he goes out and he bombs this year, they can cut him, and they're fine, and they're only out like the $9 million that they have to pay him this year with their signing bonus and his base salary. He's got a low base salary. So even these contracts that these guys are signing are super team friendly, which for me, like I was talking about, alleviates a little bit of my concern with John Dorsey that, yeah, he's just going to come in and he's just going to spend all $111 million, and then we're going to be good for 2 years, and then you got to cut all these guys because they're too expensive. It doesn't seem like that's the case. So whether that's him or whether he was smart and got somebody hired that could handle that for him, I don't know. But either way, I was pleased. I'm not trying to say 8-8 or playoffs next year or anything like that, but I think we can at least beat 0-16.
I mean, I would hope. That's one thing. Yeah, I mean, 1-31 in Hughes' tenure, that's not exactly anything to brag about. But you guys, let's move on to a little bit to the draft. You guys had 6 picks in the top 65. But now you still have the number 1. You have the number 4. You have a second-round pick. What are you, outside of quarterback, let's not get into quarterbacks yet, what are you looking to attack? Who are you in love with? Who do you want to see don the brown and orange?
So who I'm in love with, my favorite draft prospect this year, this is my second year of actually doing my own scouting and everything, and so this guy's been my favorite in the 2 years, is Minkah Fitzpatrick. It saddened me a little bit when I heard Demarius Randall was moving to free safety, because with him moving to free safety, I actually think that eliminates the Browns from taking Minkah Fitzpatrick. But if they still wanted to, I would totally understand. I think he's getting nitpicked a lot as this process keeps going on. He's the highest rated guy that I've ever graded. I got to do his report for the ITP draft guide that's going to be coming out April 1st. Make sure you pre-order yours. Go to, actually, is the website itpdraftguide.com?
You can go to the website, and there's a link on the website, and if you go to our Twitter page, it is pinned. That is at ITPylon.
Oh, Nick, this is why we pay you the big bucks, buddy. But yeah, so I got to write his report. I got to cover him, and I think he's going to be one of our highest graded guys in this draft, in the draft guide. But you look at him, and I think he's getting a little devalued because he's not going to be an outside corner. I think a lot of people talk about him wanting to put him out at the outside corner, and that's not where I would play him, and that's not a problem. I think people are still trying to adjust the idea of the fact that you're going to be playing a nickel cornerback a lot in today's NFL. And so because of that, I think it warrants a top 5, top 10 pick for a guy who, he said it himself, he's like, my best position is playing in the slot. He played that star position, that nickel corner there in Nick Saban's defense for a couple of years. Played a little bit of safety when Eddie Jackson got hurt in 2016, excuse me. So he has the capability of playing that free safety role, but obviously the Browns have that handled with Demarius Randall. I really like Brian Body Calhoun playing in the slot. He's cheap, and he's pretty good. So it's like, I just don't think Minkah Fitzpatrick's going to be that pick. So for who they're going to target, I don't know. They could be targeting you for all I know, Nick. But if it was me, I still
wouldn't be wise.
Hey man, I hear you got great get off on the line of scrimmage. So.
Yeah, but I'm about 170 pounds. It doesn't really work out for me.
Hey, it's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog. Right?
Dude, of course. I mean, I've been living my life by that and being a short guy, #short guy brand.
Hey, that's all right. But you have good hair, so.
Hey, thank you so much.
Yeah. But, so obviously, quarterback. Everyone's going to talk about quarterbacks, which we'll get into. So, for me, I still think you need to address the cornerback with a C, cornerback position. Obviously, they signed T.J. Carey. He can be a solid number 2 cornerback. You do not have a number 1 cornerback on this roster. Jamar Taylor, honestly, I thought he was going to be the first one to go. I was really surprised to see that it was Jason McCourty, but he got traded to New England, so good for him, I guess. So,
exactly. Hey, if I'm not mistaken, Mike, your wife's a New England fan, right?
She is, yeah. She loves the McCourty twins.
Yeah, so how is that dynamic?
Oh, she was pumped. When I messaged her, I was like, hey, Jason McCourty just got traded to New England, and she was like, yes, give me all the McCourtys, please. So,
yeah. Hey, Rutgers.
She's happy at least, Happy wife, happy life, Nick.
That's what I hear. Yeah, the Rutgers connection, so you got to represent Jersey as well. So what about this scenario, Mike? You guys trade back with Buffalo. You trade that 4th to Buffalo. Buffalo moves up and takes the signal caller that they deem is the best. And you guys go and you draft somebody like Denzel Ward or Jair Alexander or somebody like that to kind of shore up that cornerback position. If
you can promise me that Denzel Ward is there at 12, I will make that trade 100 times out of 100 times. Denzel Ward as an outside cornerback is my favorite cornerback in this draft. I think if you look at what Greg Williams wants to do and what he complained about not being able to do all last year because we didn't have good enough cornerbacks is, being able to get up to the quarterback and having cornerbacks that you can put right on the line of scrimmage, be able to handle guys like at the line of scrimmage and play from that press alignment and not have to worry about, the wide receiver getting 5-10 yards behind them right away. Denzel Ward, of all the guys that I've viewed, now I in full disclosure, I have not watched every single cornerback in this draft, but of the guys that I did watch, Denzel Ward is the best at the line of scrimmage. He's not going to overpower anybody. He's lacking a little bit in play strength, but if you look at his footwork, if you look at his ability to match angles as they're releasing and his ability to mirror in close quarters like there at the line of scrimmage, he's the best there. And if that's what Greg Williams wants his cornerbacks to do, Denzel Ward makes the most sense. That being said, I don't know if he's there at 12. I think, the longer that, again, this draft process keeps going on, it sounds like he's gaining speed. Now, obviously there's all these crazy trades that have already started to happen, the Jets moving up and stuff like that, so we're starting to wonder, quarterbacks are going 1, 2, 3, and the Browns trade back, and then another quarterback goes at 4. Does that start to push people down to where he may be there at 12? I don't know. But if you can promise me right now that he's there at 12, yeah, absolutely, I'd make that pick.
Yeah, there's teams like Tampa that might go in that direction, so there are a lot of teams that are looking for cornerback help, and so it might not happen.
Yeah, that's the thing. Oakland, obviously, Oakland lost one of their cornerbacks because the Browns signed him. They did sign Rashaan Melvin from Indianapolis, but
very cheap too.
They're done by any means. So yeah, there's. I would be slightly worried. If Denzel Ward is your guy, I would be worried about moving back too far because at the end of the day, you can still take a Jair Alexander, you can take a Mike Hughes, things like that, which I really like Jair too. No matter what Michael Kiss tries to say on Twitter, I like Jair Alexander.
I love Mike, man.
That he's a different type of cornerback than Denzel Ward, and I would not feel comfortable taking Jair Alexander and playing him on the line of scrimmage, like play in and play out. I think he's really good in man coverage. I think he's really good in zone. But I want to be lining him, 5 yards off, and that's basically what we were doing last year with the cornerbacks anyway. So it's like, he's going to be an improvement over who you have. But if I have an opportunity to get Denzel Ward, I want to get Denzel Ward. So if you move back, you move back to 12, I think you got to start thinking about other positions. Obviously, I know we'll talk about Joe Thomas and everything retiring. That puts a big hole. It does sound like Chris Hubbard's going to be the right tackle. They did not sign him to be the left tackle like I thought, when they signed Chris Hubbard, I thought, hey, he can play left tackle for a year while they're figuring something out. But they signed him to be right tackle. Sean Coleman's kicking over to the left. So if Sean Coleman plays left tackle like he played right tackle, I think the Browns better keep
0-16
for left tackle of the future. Yeah. And so, you move back to 12, you start thinking about, Connor Williams, you start thinking about Mike McGlinchey, guys like that. I think the Browns are in a position, they're definitely not in a position to where they need to be picky at all, as far as positional. And I don't think it necessarily be like, just take best player available, because best player available is going to be dictated off the needs and all of that and everything. We can get, that's, people have had that discussion for a long time. But I think you have enough options to where if you wanted to move back, you can, and even if, say, Denzel Ward went off the board, maybe a Bradley Chubb, maybe a Mike McGlinchey's there, wherever you fall. I think it's worth noting, I did see Ben Albright today say on Twitter that he does not think the Browns want to move based off of who he talks to, and that guy's got sources. I don't know. He seems to be right more than he is wrong. But he said he got the indication that the Browns don't actually want to move back as far as where they would have to if they traded with the Bills.
All right. Let's explore this scenario then. They don't move back.
Okay.
At one, you take the quarterback that we'll probably talk about here in a few minutes. So then the Giants and the Jets, let's say they both go quarterback.
Okay.
Who does?
Do you think the Giants go? You're a Giants guy.
Of course.
I'm looking at the jerseys hanging up behind you right now. You're a Giants guy.
Of course.
So, do you think the Giants go quarterback?
You know what? I'm not 100% sure, and I'm not 100% sold on them going quarterback. I mean, I would be okay if they did trade back and got King's ransom because there are so many holes on that roster. The cap is in such a bad position right now. Dave Gettleman inherited one of the worst situations. I feel like not enough people are talking about how bad of a situation Jerry Reese left Dave Gettleman.
Yeah.
But if they are in love with one of these guys at quarterback, I say take them. And I don't think you should just draft a quarterback for quarterback's sake. But if this is your guy, if you believe in Josh Rosen, if you believe in Baker Mayfield or whomever, you have to take him there. But if they did trade back to, say, 5 or something along those lines, or even trade back to the Dolphins or 15 to the Cardinals and got King's ransom, I would not be upset. No, a lot of Giant fans would be. At that point, I would not be. But I would be a little bit disappointed if they stuck at 2 and drafted Saquon Barkley, to be honest.
I can't say I would blame you if you were upset about that.
And that literally leads me right into where are we going for the Browns? Do you go with Chubb to pair up with Emmanuel Ogbah and Myles Garrett, or do you go with Saquon Barkley to get that dynamic playmaker on the offensive side of the ball, or someone else? Yeah.
If it were me, and those are my 2 options, I'm going to go Bradley Chubb.
Or somebody else. If you wanted Quentin Nelson because you just felt like you couldn't miss that kind of prospect, or Raekwon Smith, even though your guys' linebackers are in pretty good shape.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, and it's no disrespect to any of these guys, because obviously if you're getting talked about in the top 10, all of these guys are great prospects.
Of course.
Quentin Nelson. You've got Zeitler, you've got Batonio. Both guys are locked up for the next 5 years. So, I just don't that he would be the pick, just because that's really not a positional need at all. I don't believe it would be Saquon Barkley. One, I don't think that's in Dorsey's DNA to take a running back that high. I saw the statistic or whatever. Like, literally any team that John Dorsey has been a scout or an executive for has never taken a running back in the first round, ever. This man's been around the game for a long time. So I can't believe that it's going to be Saquon Barkley. So if it were me, if you're sitting there and you're looking at Bradley Chubb, obviously you just took Myles Garrett last year. Obviously you have Emmanuel Ogbah, who was playing pretty well until he broke his foot this past year. He took some lumps his first year. I think he learned a lot. I think he grew a lot. I think he benefited from playing opposite of Myles Garrett. So it's like, oh, well, that's not a need. Can you ever have too many pass rushers, though? And, yeah, I mean, so a guy like Bradley Chubb makes a lot of sense. And it's like, he's a guy, too, that you can kick inside if you want to. If you're, say you're in the sub, in a nickel package, and it's 3rd and long or something like that, you can easily take that guy, kick him inside, and he's still going to be just as disruptive. He's still learning a lot about his pass rush plan and everything like that, but he's good. And it's like, if you can have 3 really good pass rushers that are cheap still, because Ogbah's still on his rookie deal, Garrett's going to be on his rookie deal for a while, and then Chubb's obviously going to be on his rookie deal for a while. You can get after the quarterback with guys like that. I don't think you pass up an opportunity like that.
That'd be dangerous, yeah.
If it was me based off of need, I still think, Denzel Ward would have to be the guy for me.
Yeah, and hey, based off pure need, and it's not like Denzel Ward is a scrub whatsoever. I mean, he would come in and play that very, very well. That would be, just thinking, though, how do offenses block Myles Garrett, Chubb, Ogbah, and then you even got Larry Ogunjobi. You have Caleb Brantley, who fell to the 6th round last year because of the battery charge that was dismissed, but I think he had 2 sacks in very limited reps last season. I did the report for him for the first ITP guide that we did last year, and I came away really liking his quickness off the line of scrimmage and everything like that, but then all of the battery charges came out and he just slid down the board. But I mean, it seems like you guys have a really bright future with all these young players in that defensive front, especially if you had Chubb.
Yeah. He was one who really surprised me because, you know, like a lot of – because I remember reading your report on this, so I go to you for a lot of my interior defensive line takes and everything like that because that's just not something I'm good at, and you're great at it, so I like to –
Thanks, man.
You know what you write. But, yeah, I mean, like, he was a guy that was like, yeah, like, this guy makes sense. You know, you're looking at a big need for the Browns last year going into the 2017 season, and that three-technique defensive tackle was something that was big. They obviously got Larry Ogunjobi in the third round, who I loved coming out of UNC Charlottesville and everything. And then, yeah, you get him in the sixth. You get Caleb Brantley in the sixth round. It's like it's kind of an embarrassment of riches. And so obviously they've moved on from Danny Shelton. I think it's possible that you see Ogunjobi play some of the one-technique nose tackle in their four-man front with Brantley playing there at 3. You still could use some depth there, honestly, because after that, I mean, Jamie Meter is a fan favorite in Cleveland, but Jamie Meter is, you know, he's fine. He's a really nice guy, and he has a very thick beard, and that's kind of where my compliments end for him.
Does he have the best beard on the Browns? This is the analysis people tune in for right here.
Man, well now Joe Thomas, because Joe Thomas, I mean, he did that beard really well.
It was very manly too. Yeah.
It's either him or it's Joel Bitonio, and I say Joel Bitonio because he's got that Andrew Luck thing going on, you know, where it's a lot thicker down here, kind of like underneath the jaw and everything. But he owns it, he rocks it. I think he does all right. Jamie Meter's not bad, when it comes to the beard. So
he's got the beard game.
Beard takes for you though, but yeah, so get back to your point about how do you block those guys? I think that's the point, right? I mean, Greg Williams wants his defense to be aggressive, so why would you not give him I get that needing a third defensive end pass rusher is not the biggest need on the Browns, which thankful for that, but why would you pass that? You don't why would you pass that up if you had an opportunity at it, unless you felt like, hey, we need to get our number one cornerback. I mean, I just don't think then when you're putting the positional values into things like running back makes sense at 4. I get that Leonard Fournette worked there, or if he was 5 or whatever number he was. I get that Ezekiel Elliott worked there. Is Saquon Barkley that? I don't know.
It's all about context too. I mean, Ezekiel Elliott, and I'm not taking anything away from Ezekiel Elliott. He's fantastic, but he went to a situation that was perfectly tailored to his skill set with the offensive line that they had in place. Same with Leonard Fournette in Jacksonville when it comes to the mentality that Tom Coughlin and the culture that he was trying to build there. You know what I'm saying? So
absolutely,
there's context that needs to be. There's context in all of these situations where all of these running backs got drafted high. It doesn't mean Saquon should go or shouldn't go, but situation is going to dictate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it always gets back to the point, too, that it's like where you're drafted is not necessarily like where you rank in this class, too. I think people are like, oh, well, if he's not the number one overall pick, but he's the best player. You can be the best player in the draft and go 7th overall. I mean, it's the context, because obviously there's going to be positional values. There's going to be team needs that are going to be built in there. So I'm not trying to say Saquon Barkley is going to be bad. I'm just saying, I just don't see the need being so great that the Browns are like, you know what? We got to get this running back, the piece that we're missing, because trust me, there's plenty more pieces that are needed on this roster.
It's very true. That, and when you think about the running back class, it's probably the deepest position group I would say in this class.
Oh, yeah, it's so deep. Yes. And I saw a lot of people talking about that when they signed Carlos Hyde, because it was like, Carlos Hyde, I like Carlos Hyde. He's fine. A lot of people were like, why wouldn't you just drafted 2 running backs in this deep draft class? It's just, it's crazy how deep it is, that it doesn't make sense to spend such a high pick, which I think then eventually, obviously then hurts value, where Saquon Barkley goes, because someone knows, they're picking there at the top, they're like, hey, I can get 85% of the running back, in the second round at 40% of the cost, and I can still address another position of need where maybe it's not, it's a little bit more scarce in this draft, like an offensive tackle or, like a cornerback or something or a wide receiver or what have you. So, yeah, I don't know. This is my 2 cents, what do I know?
Nah, yeah, a lot. And speaking of things you may know, the Browns, who, number 1 pick, and I'm pretty sure the consensus is you guys are going to go quarterback here.
Oh, absolutely.
Who is it that you want?
Who is it that I want?
Who is it
Michael
that...
Nuttle was the G-
If
Michael Nuttle is the GM of the Browns, this is who he's selecting?
Yes, and then we'll go with what they're going to actually do. So first, you're the GM.
Yeah, so if it's me, Josh Rosen, UCLA.
Josh Rosen.
I don't want to draw a direct comparison between like the quarterbacks from last season in the last year's draft class and the quarterbacks in this draft class, but the idea is kind of the same in my mind. Deshaun Watson, my QB1 last year, Josh Rosen QB1 this year, because what you see is a guy who is more polished, that I think is more ready to step in right now, and so for me, I value that a little bit more. Now, granted, you may be sacrificing a little bit on upside in their ceiling and everything like that, but you're also banking on having the higher floor to where, hey, I know this guy's coming in day one, and I know that I'm going to at least get this much from him, and everything above that, like, we're going to try to get as much out of him as possible, but if at the minimum I get this much, we're going to be better because of this. So I kind of correlate, Josh Rosen to Deshaun Watson in that manner. I mean, we all saw what Deshaun Watson did. He walked right in to the league and just lit it on fire for the couple of games while he was in there because, he was ready to play. And I think people discredit him because, his arm strength's not as great, and, he runs too much and everything like that. It's just like, but the guy knew how to play the quarterback position, didn't have to get over a learning curve, came right in, started to tear it up. So then for me, like the second guy, is Sam Darnold. And again, I kind of relate this to like a Mitch Trubisky or a Patrick Mahomes. Guys that are like, hey, we're just starting to scratch the surface on what this guy can actually be as a quarterback. And their upside, if you develop this guy, if this guy ends up being the quarterback that he should be, this guy is definitely going to be a better quarterback than, the guy who, than Deshaun Watson or Josh Rosen. But there's always that element of, if he's not, you got Blake Bortles, And if anything's told us, now I should be fair, it's playoff game winning Blake Bortles. He's got more playoff wins than the Browns do in my lifetime. So, but, you get what I'm saying. So for me, if it was me, I want to take a guy that I know can come in, and if he has to play week 2 or week 3 or what have you, because Hugh Jackson's already feeling the pressure, and he's going to play his rookie quarterback, I want a guy who's going to be ready right now, and that is going to be Josh Rosen.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree. He's the most polished. He's my quarterback 1 at the moment, but I haven't really done as much research on the quarterbacks as I would have liked to. But it seems like, at least the narrative that's growing, is John Dorsey and the Browns are in love with Sam Darnold. They acquire Tyrod Taylor. Now Tyrod can start for the length of his contract, and then Sam Darnold can come in year 2 and do that whole Carson Palmer thing. Do you think that's the scenario?
I do. I think that's the scenario 100%. Will he get the full 16 games this year? We'll see, because Carson Palmer had Marvin Lewis. Sam Darnold would have Hugh Jackson, and despite their tenure together in Cincinnati, they are not the same coach by any means. But I agree with you. I think you said it perfectly, Nick. They got Tyrod Taylor, and I think what you do is you've got yourself your bridge quarterback that you can play with right now and compete with right now, because at the end of the day, they're trying to win football games, obviously. I think there's an even more heightened emphasis on winning this year. I know Hugh Jackson definitely feels it, and so you have Tyrod in there, and then that allows you to take the guy who, yes, you need to take a little bit more time with, and that would be Sam Darnold. My big concern with that is Hugh Jackson, the quarterback whisperer, has not been whispering very well in Cleveland. So, I would be a little bit worried about the development of Sam Darnold in Cleveland. But, I think that's going to be the option. My hope is, like I said, I hope he does get the full 16 games. Tyrod Taylor, because of the way his contract was structured, which is really weird, on the 3rd day of this league year, the rest of the last 3 years of the contract actually void, so he's on a 1-year deal. They have him for this year. So you've got to think then they at least view Sam Darnold as ready to go 2019. And yeah, I mean, like I said, if they develop him right, if he becomes the player that he can become, you're fine. You're good. And I think it's worth taking that time to find out. If anything, recency bias and whatnot, but look at Kaiser. Was Kaiser ready to play day one? Absolutely not. I wasn't proud of it, but I was like, hey, man, I'd rather have Cody Kessler out there taking those lumps than poor Deshaun Kaiser.
What about Kevin Hogan?
But, hey, man, I know. But yeah, I mean, I think there's part of it that, if you rush him out there too quickly and everything, you may end up stunting that growth and that development and everything. And it seemed to work all right for Carson Palmer, but that was also, 15 years ago when he got drafted number 1 overall and didn't play. It's not the environment of the NFL. And I don't know if Hugh Jackson, if you're sitting there at 2-4 or 1-5 or whatever, if he can sit there, because I don't think he has any rope left, so he could be very, very tempted to play that rookie quarterback to try to save his job, and that could end up hurting you in the long term.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, man. I mean, I know 2 years ago you liked the Hugh hiring and everything, and, we had to trust the process, talked about how Sam Hinkie was doing it with the Sixers, and now, Browns are getting it done, but mistake after mistake after mistake, man, it just has not materialized, and a lot of people are already calling for his head. How long is his leash? You guys come out, you guys start off 0-4, 0-5. Is Cleveland burning once again?
I mean, Cleveland would have to stop burning first for it to start burning because of the Browns. But, yeah, I mean, you would like to think after coming off 1-31 that, hey, yeah, if you're 0-4, you're 0-5, you're gone because you don't have time to sit around and wait and everything, especially with the pieces that you put in. I mean, that's the thing, because, yes, a lot of their free agency signings did not really suggest that, hey, we're trying to make the playoffs this year. But you did go out and you spent some draft picks, and you're spending sizable money on your quarterback and a new wide receiver. So I think the goal is there to win. You want to win a substantial number of games. I don't know, 6 to 8 games or something like that. So because of that, if you're starting off 0-4, I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on there. The thing is, though, who do you turn to be the interim? I mean, do you want Greg Williams running your team? Do you want Todd Haley running your team?
We're going to get into that in a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, both of those guys do not have good track records as head coaches. Very good coordinators, obviously, but they're not great head coaches, at least in their tenures. And so I would think that he would be in trouble if you're starting off 0-4, but at the end of the day, the man survived after 1-31. Whatever Marvin Lewis is drinking in Cincinnati, he must have shipped some up to Cleveland, because if Hugh Jackson can go 1-31 and still have a job, I don't know. I think
it's got to be the smoothies, man.
It may take them going 0-16 again for him to get fired. I don't know. People were asking me to put a number on it last year, and I was like, if you don't win at least 6 games in 2017, Hugh Jackson's gone.
Yeah.
0-16 later, and Hugh Jackson is still there.
And he's still rocking it with the new general manager and everything. And you brought up Todd Haley before, and to me, man, he comes over from the rival Steelers. He has a reputation of kind of being a hard guy to be around. He sort of has a grating personality, if you will. How is he going to mesh with Hugh, in your opinion? And then how does he mesh with Tyrod Taylor at the same time, at least for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting, because obviously, yeah, if he's the kind of guy who kind of grinds on people, I think Hugh Jackson is that kind of guy, and I think Greg Williams is that kind of guy. So I don't know if they're all oblivious to it or they're just desensitized to it because that's who they are.
Their offenses are different in styles as well, if I'm not mistaken, with Hugh and Todd Haley. So weren't they going to butt heads?
So because admittedly, I didn't really care about what kind of offense Todd Haley ran until he became the coordinator of the team that I root for. So in researching that and everything, it's to his credit, one of his big things is he likes to point out that he does not have a unique scheme that he likes to go to. He said he's not about the quote. Literally, he said the quote was, "I'm not in the business of putting square pegs in round holes." So he's going to tailor it to who he wants. Now, if you look at what he was doing in Pittsburgh, they love to get the ball into the hands of Antonio Brown. They weren't afraid to stretch the field. Big Ben's got a big arm, obviously, and they like to stretch it, but at the same time, they're not afraid to get underneath and get the ball in the playmaker's hands. And I think you have that ability here in Cleveland. I personally think Tyrod Taylor has a pretty solid deep ball. I think he won't throw it, though. So I think you gotta, if you're not going to be able to do that, I think it's going to be a lot of quicker, shorter things, kind of like what you saw in Buffalo, where you're just dumping it off, getting it into playmaker's hands, and going. Will that mesh with what he wants to do? I don't think so. I think Hugh has always been a big proponent of trying to stretch it. I think that's one of his biggest criticisms, is the fact that you're trying to stretch the field with wide receivers that can't separate. When you've got, Ricardo Lewis, former cornerback from Auburn, not really working out the wide receiver position, trying to run streak routes and things like that. So from what I've read, Todd Haley, this is going to be Todd Haley's offense. It's going to be his terminology. He's calling the plays. It's going to be Todd Haley's show. If that's the case, I have a little bit more confidence. If it's just a sham and Todd Haley's coming in and he's running Hugh Jackson's offense, I don't feel great about that.
Has to be a chain of command, man. Yeah. There has to be a set chain of command. He's the head coach. Offensive coordinator has the offense. Defensive coordinator has the defense. I mean, that should always be the structure of the team. I mean, just looking at the Giants this past season with Ben McAdoo, that was horrendous what they were doing. Mike Sullivan was basically relegated to just being, his assistant at that point, not being in control of the full offense. We saw how that worked out. Got an over-under for you. Jarvis Landry, over-under 90 receptions in this offense.
Over under 90 receptions. I'll take over.
You think over? Okay. I mean, he had 112. He had 112 in Miami. Do you envision them kind of using him as an extension of the run game with those small A-dot kind of routes, having like a catch percentage of around 69 to 70% again?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, because at the end of the day, I think, Jarvis Landry is good at what he does, and what he is a slot receiver. You didn't bring him in here to be, an outside guy. You didn't bring him in to be a number two. My hope is that he is a slot receiver. And so because of that, use him as, because one, I'm not, again, you may not be calling the plays, but in the last 2 years, I haven't seen a lot of running done in Cleveland. So, I think you're going to look at other more creative ways, and that's going to be getting the ball into Jarvis Landry's hand in quick, screens and in quick routes and things like that. And so, I think 90 is definitely possible, because I think I don't anticipate them using him any differently than they did really in Miami. And with Tyrod at quarterback, I think that plays right into him, because again, he's a guy who has a reputation for being a clean quarterback. He doesn't turn the ball over. Some people would also, they would also read that as he's not a risk taker. Because of that, he's looking to get the ball out quickly, and he wants to get it in the guy's hands quickly. And hey, Jarvis Landry is perfect for that, And so, let him go be athletic. Absolutely. I think it's going to be interesting though, if you can keep Corey Coleman on the field, and if you can keep Josh Gordon on the field, because there are two guys that you can stretch the field with, and now you've got Jarvis Landry running down underneath or whatever, coming out of the slot. Maybe yes, it's still going to be shorter, but you're giving him more space to work with instead of defenses being up on the line of scrimmage on him the whole time and everything.
I don't know. You got to look at all three of those receivers too. They're all different in styles, and they all bring their own unique set to this offense. It's kind of exciting when you think about it, especially from the Browns' perspective, when you again have guys like Ricardo Lewis running significant amount of snaps for you guys last year.
I just don't understand how Ricardo Lewis is still on the Cleveland Browns, man. I just don't get it.
I'm pulling for him, man. He's the underdog. He's the underdog there.
I mean, if you're going to pull for anybody, pull for Rashard Higgins. At least give that guy a shot. So Colorado State's own.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's Colorado State kid, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I remember I'm always hearing Peter Jennings. He was CSU Ram. He's a big DFS player. He always talk about Higgins because he went to Colorado State.
Yeah, no way.
Yeah, all the DFS community out there. But anyways, so I need to touch on this before we get out of here and before we do the fact of the day. Can you give me a quick summary on how valuable Joe Thomas was to the Cleveland Brown organization and to young, happy Mike Nuttle?
back before I really knew what it was like to be a Browns fan and how painful it was. Joe Thomas. Just look at all the things that have been written about Joe Thomas and said about Joe Thomas in the last couple of days, really, since he announced his retirement. Guy was a rock.
Yeah.
You don't play 10,000 snaps in a row and make 10 straight Pro Bowls and everything if you're not really, really, really good at what you do. In a place where Cleveland Browns football, where you were not really relying on getting a lot of happiness with wins. You were always happy because we always had Joe Thomas, man, and it was like, hey, we may stink, but we've got like one of the best left tackles in the history of football. And to see him go, see him retire hurts. And I know a lot of people are kind of upset because the announcement did not come until the day like that free agency actually started, even though like legal tampering had started. But you listened on his podcast, he talks about that on the Tomahawk podcast about how he talked to Dorsey, he talked to Hugh a week before. They knew everything, and you just listen to him talk. He said he knows that the Browns are turning around, and he's still confident in that. And he said, I want to be out there so bad, but I just know that my body cannot do it anymore. And that is because of everything that he did for the Cleveland Browns in the last 11 seasons. Always showed up, always worked. You never heard him complain. You can't say anything but good things about him because, frankly, I mean, he's the best Cleveland Browns player in my lifetime. Obviously, I'm not old enough to have seen Jim Brown or anything. I've read the books, I've seen the stories, or heard the stories, I've seen the highlights and everything. But to me, Joe Thomas was the best, and it was funny because like when he got drafted, so it was 2007, he was the 3rd overall pick, and I was 16 years old, so like I didn't really know anything about the NFL draft, and all I knew was everybody wanted Brady Quinn. Everybody knew the Browns had to get Brady Quinn, and all of a sudden we're drafting this tackle from Wisconsin, and I was like, why would they draft a tackle when you could get a quarterback? Like, you got to have a quarterback. Greatest decision. I mean, it was Phil Savage too, so he did make a lot of good decisions in Cleveland as the GM. That was the best one, and to see him go, it stinks. It leaves a huge hole on the left side of the offensive line. But if anybody earned the right to walk away on his own terms, it was Joe Thomas. So obviously, we wish him the best. I really enjoy it. If you haven't checked out his podcast that he does with Andrew Hawkins, the Tomahawk podcast, I would highly recommend it because it's enjoyable. I think he gets very candid, especially when he announces his retirement. He got very candid about everything that went into that. And he's walking away making the right decision for him from a health standpoint, from a long-term health standpoint, just for himself. And you hate to see guys hold on too long to where it does permanent damage. And I think he's walking away at the right time, hopefully. And you can't be upset about that because, like I said, he gave everything to Cleveland, he gave everything to the Browns. You got to be thankful for that. So I'll keep playing Madden 18 though because he's on the roster on Madden 18. So I'll just keep it in that first couple of years of the franchise. I can tell you, I've been through a season. He doesn't retire at the end of the 17th season on Madden 18. So all
right, take notes, kids. That's how I'll cope. Take notes, kids. That's how you cope with the loss of Joe Thomas, the great, and he will be a Hall of Famer in 5 years. So,
absolutely.
So before we get out of here, we had a lot of depressing Browns talk, but a lot of reflection. I thought it went well. I'm going to do a little bit of true and false. All right. This is the fact of the day. So, this one, in the Roman Empire, was horse urine used as mouthwash? True or false?
I mean, I hope that's false, but the fact that you're bringing it up makes me want to say true.
It's actually false. The truth...
Oh, thank goodness.
No, but the truth is much worse, Mike. They actually used human urine.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so I guess they would piss in a cup and then use it to brush their teeth. And that is the fact of the day. Very, very gross.
What a great note to leave that on after talking about the Browns for the last 45 minutes.
Exactly. It's very, very fitting. Nah, but is there anything you would like to plug, Mike?
Hey, like I said, there's been a lot of work going on at the draft guide over here at Inside the Pylon. Dan Hatman's been leading the charge in that. We've got a lot of great people that, obviously, when you got guys like Mark Schofield doing the quarterback work for you, this draft guide is going to be pretty good. There's been a lot of work going on. Dan's been beating the drum, getting people working on it, and it's worth it. I think the hard work's going to show with everybody. I think we had good success last year with the draft guide, and I think this year's going to be even better. So get out there, make sure you get your pre-order in. I believe it's supposed to drop by April 1st. And if you can think of a prospect, he's probably covered in this thing. We've got prospects for days in this, so make sure you come and check it out.
Yeah, it's really something special, and I'm not just tooting that because I work for Inside the Pylon. It's actually really, really elaborate. So many scouts involved, so many players have been checked, cross-checked, multiple sets of eyes on all of these players. It's really, really good.
A lot of arguments going on in the Slack channel for guys.
Tons of arguments, people pounding the table for their guys. It's just an absolutely great time. And yes, it will drop. It will go live April 1st. Pre-order is available now. Go to @ITPylon. Mike, where can they follow you on Twitter?
You can follow me at MPN_21. I'm the handsome guy with the Browns t-shirt and the cute girl in the back of the picture. Come for the Browns takes and the draft chatter. Stay for the random tax advice that comes out every now and then,
Hey, it's tax season right now, so that's very valuable. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick Falato. It's very, very easy. NickFalato. See, I just never got really... It's very boring, I always feel like I should have made it something more exciting, but I just went with my name.
Dude, I went with my initials, and it was like, someone's like, oh, you should probably change that if make it more football sounding. And I was like, I'm not that creative, man. So I think you're fine. At least you spelled your name out. That was good.
Yeah, that's the one thing. Alrighty, for Inside the Pylon, for Mike, for myself, you guys, hope you enjoyed this episode. Have a lovely, lovely day, and check out the ITP Draft Guide. Take care now.